Hello and welcome to the video walkthrough of my Ruby gem that I made for the online software development class. As we start off, here is a quick diagram of what I wanted my program to do. We start off with a class that runs the CLI. Now, this class would run the interface and create a scraper object to obtain the information. Then the scraper class would scrape the aquarium's website. In this case, it is the Mystic Aquarium. It would create a calendar object and an event object. The calendar object is just to encapsulate the events, while the event class would have attributes such as name, date, time. I did get a little off the diagram when I actually made the class itself. Instead of a start time and an end time, it does have a description, and the time is included in the date. So as we walk over to the code, I did make it so it was an executable in the bin. It's not an RB file, so that way you don't need the Ruby interpreter to execute it directly. You can type /bin/run and it will start the program. Now, when we start off the program, it gives you a prompt informing you that these are the events from the Mystic Aquarium, and it asks you what you would like to do. It also gives you events or exit, which is what you would type in. So if we typed in events, it does scrape the website and gets a list of the events that are currently on the calendar. We have Toddler Tuesdays and so forth. At this point, it asks you to enter a number of the event you'd like to see more information of. So if we enter 1, it does show you the date and time, and then gives you a description that is all taken from the website. At that point, it does prompt you again if you want to see the events or exit. If we wanted to get to another event, it will list them again, and you can pick a new one. So this all starts in the run file. It does tell the interpreter that this is a Ruby file, even though it doesn't have the .rb. It does load my environment file and makes a new instance of AquariumEvents controller, passing in the website for Mystic Aquarium and running the method call. In my environment, I do require OpenURI and /lib under require all, so that way we can have all of these loaded without requiring them in each file. Also, my gem file did require nokogiri, so that way we can scrape the information. As we move over to the events controller, it does initialize with a URL, which is the URL of the Mystic Aquarium, and it makes a new scraper object. Now, when that new scraper object, which is saved to an instance variable of A, is created, that is also initialized with a URL, and it makes an instance variable of doc, which is the original website, and then it runs scrape. Our scrape will get the links for all the events using nokogiri. If we move over here, go to the Mystic Aquarium events, I got the information by inspecting and combing through for this class, which would be in H2, and then a class of tribe event lists, event title, and then we wanted to get all the A's, which is the anchor, So that's where I got the arguments for that CSS search. Now, to get the links, I did use map or collect to iterate over each one of the links under these tags, and I returned back the reference, which would be the link to the website. At that point, once I have those saved to an instance variable that I can manipulate, in another method called scrape events, I do an each iterator over those events or over those links, and out of each one I scrape out a name, a date, and a description, save that to a hash, and pass it into a new calendar event or a new event instance that is in my calendar class. The calendar, as I said before, is mainly just an encapsulation of the events, so there's not really much to go on here. You can read the events that are in the array that it's initialized with. It does make a copy and freezes it, so that way this method cannot make any changes to the array that was made. Now, in the equals method, to make sure that it is only passing in classes of event, I do have it checking to make sure what is passed in is an object defined as event, and then I shovel it into the array that we initialized with. At that point, we move over to our event class, which is initialized with attributes. This is going to be the hash that we passed in earlier, and to save myself time, I did mass assign these with an iterator, which would take the key and the value that are passed in from the hash, and I used the send method, which will take the method that I pass in, well, the string that I pass in, and turn it into a method. In this case, I'm doing the key equals, which is going to be the first variable in each iteration, which ends up being a name, date, or description symbol, and then it gives it the value that's given in to assign each part of the hash to the instance variable that I already described. And then it'll run the save method, which shovels itself into an all method. This is mainly just to keep track of all the events. And then we do have a reader self.all. Now back over to our event controller. This is where most of the work is done. Our call method gives us those prompts that we were given, and then runs the method menu. At that point, we're asking the user for the input, and while the input does not equal exit is where we run our case statement. If you input events, it's going to run the list events method, which takes the scraper object and checks its calendar, and then its events array, which is filled with event instances, and each one of those with an index. We're going to print out the index followed by the name. Now this would just list the events that we have in that array. Then we ask for input again after displaying that we want them to enter the number of the event. That would then run the display event method using our get input method, which is just a simple reset of the input variable and then gets.strip. Then in display, it runs, or it sets a variable to the events array, and we're going to get the index by changing our input to an integer and subtracting 1 to make it into a human number. And then at that point, we're going to put the name, the date, and the description on the screen. And then it would go back into this case where it would ask for the input again, whether events or exit.